Welcome to the SecurityDNA podcast, powered by SecurityInfoWatch. This is your front line for bold insights and real intelligence that cuts through the noise and gets straight to what matters most. I'm Samantha Schober, assistant editor of SecurityInfoWatch and the producer of today's episode. At SecurityInfoWatch, we deliver sharp, real-time insights into the biggest challenges facing security and risk professionals today. From emerging threats to game-changing technologies, we go beyond the headlines to provide expert analysis, real-world strategies, and critical risk intelligence, giving you the knowledge you need to stay ahead in this rapidly evolving landscape. Joining us on today's episode is GMR Security Consulting Group CEO Mary Gates, who is a lot of things. She's been in corporate security management for 35 years, is a recognized guest speaker at high-profile industry events across the globe, is a certified CFSSP and CHPA3, and has served proudly on several boards, with her most current posting being that of advisory member on the ASIS banking and financial services community. Mary, thank you for taking the time to talk to us on SecurityDNA today. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. Look forward to speaking with you.
So we're going to touch on a number of topics today, but before we get into 2025's definition of protection and the impact of female security leaders, I wanted to talk a little bit about your organization. So for our audience, GMR is a security consulting firm that provides organizations with tailored physical security strategies, risk assessments, the whole gamut. GMR very recently rebranded, I think last month, from GMR Security to GMR Security Consulting Group. So I think my first question is, why now? What inspired the decision to relaunch the brand? Why in 2025?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that question, and thank you again for the invitation to sit with you and have this chat. It's really interesting. Security has been changing for many years, and I think just the acceleration of the changes that security has gone through, especially post-pandemic, with all of the things that have been happening, it was really important that we at GMR Security Consulting Group really reflect that change, because we've grown as an organization and we felt it was appropriate for us to impart as part of our logo, part of our DNA, who we are as a company and how we service the marketplace. And we really rebranded to illustrate our growth with the growth of the industry. We've changed and we've grown to reflect the changes that have happened in the security industry. We've evolved, we've matured as an organization, and our logo really reflects those changes. We changed our color scheme. We haven't really changed the DNA of who we are, because at our core, we've always been transparent. We've always been full of integrity, but we've changed the services that we deliver. So as an example, we're now offering executive protection program management. We're expanding the managed services that we deliver. So we've addressed kind of the gaps that we've seen in the marketplace and the services that our clients are asking for us to deliver. So even though we've rebranded our look and feel, at our core, we're still the same company that our clients have known and trusted and loved for many years. We just have a new front door. Our website looks a little bit different because it's shown the maturity that we have as a company. And it's really been set up to be more user-friendly for our clients to navigate through and to more reflect the services that we're offering. So it's just a sleeker new front door for an invitation to learn more about us, and to see who we really are as a service to the marketplace.
So how is that? You were mentioning a lot about the company's sort of mission. So how is this change reflective of that broader mission?
So this change really shows all that we can do. So we, unfortunately, with our prior brand, didn't really illustrate it that well through our website. So we were providing a lot of these services before, but we just never really invested in marketing. Everything was done by word of mouth and through our prior relationships out in the marketplace. I come from a financial services background. I had been the executive director with JP Morgan Chase for 25 years prior to retiring and coming into GMR Security Consulting. So I've had a lot of relationships, not only in the financial sector, but in cross-sector industries, such as healthcare and in the energy sector and in some cases education. So I brought those relationships with me when I founded this company and just really reached out to build up our book of work and to provide these services. So we've been providing a lot of these services for a very long period of time, just haven't really told the marketplace about all that we can do. And we've built our book of work in those established relationships. So now it's more about us sharing to the rest of the marketplace, hey, we're here. We can solve a lot of the problems that you're dealing with, and we want to be of service to you. So it's more of an announcement about who we are, what we can do, how we do what we do, and the principles that we stand for in order to service the industry.
I think that's a great answer, especially for an industry like security, which uh, I've only been writing in the security industry now for a couple of years, and I've already seen so many, so many industry upheavals. When I
Mhm.
first started, it was video analytics and cyber physical. It was convergence, and now it's hybrid cloud, it's analytics, it's AI, and like you said just now, executive protection is now becoming a huge deal. So
Right.
securing a facility, in 2025 is going to be an entirely different beast than it was just 20, 30 years ago.
It
So,
really is. It really is. I mean, when you think about the evolution of security, uh, I'm thinking back to even the very beginning, right? When the Bank Protection Act from a financial sector standpoint, because that's the kind of in the DNA of who I am as a security
right.
practitioner. The was the financial protection the Bank Protection Act of 1968. The big thing was bank robbery. I mean, you still have
Oh,
bank robbery
wow.
today, but that's not where financial institutions lose their money. Yes, bank robberies still happen, but that's a very, very small percentage of losses that a financial institution has to deal with now. I mean, now you have insider threat, you have workplace violence, you have cyber crime, you have frauds, you have the from customer fraud, you have embezzlements, you have white collar crime, you have all of these things that people didn't think about in 1968 when they wrote the Bank Protection Act, which banks still have to adhere to today. Then you look at other things like in the energy sector with NERC and SIP requirements. Those things talk about the industry standards that you have to follow in order to protect your critical infrastructure. So when you think about all of these things and all of these industry standards that are coming into play today, and you look back over history and time, it's so much different now. I mean, going back to the origination, it was gates, guards, and guns.
Right.
That's what everybody thought security guards were: gates, guards, and guns. And that's what's physical security protection was. And that's not what it is today. Today, physical security is an enabler of the business. Today, security is a value-added partner within an organization. And you need to be able to go in, speak the language of the business, talk about how you're there to help not only protect the organization, but be in value add to the organization and help propel the organization forward. And that's really what security is all about, is enabling the business to succeed. And I think too often people in the C-suite don't hear that enough. And it's incumbent upon all of us in the security industry to talk more about that.
So kind of speaking that to that too, how is GMR adapting to that new definition of security specifically?
Well, that's where our services really do come into play, is talking about being that business enabler and helping kind of move from that reactive posture to a proactive posture and building a security program to be a business enabler for an organization. So a lot of what we do, the different pillars of services that we offer, are to help organizations move in from a reactive to a proactive posture.
That's something huge as well that I've seen is it's all about proactivity. It's all about risk assessment, stopping things before they start. I believe
Exactly.
GMR does some of that as well. Um,
Hmm.
so I kind of wanted to pivot sort of to the people side because you were
Sure.
mentioning security as a value add.
Hmm.
And I feel like one of the biggest reinforcers of that is consumer trust, is kind of
Hmm.
talking to consumers. They have to know that their data, that their assets, that their people are going to be safe. So how
Right.
does GMR sort of integrate, emotional intelligence or community
Hmm.
resilience into its security philosophy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, emotional intelligence, security, resiliency, all of that is basic and core to the foundation of everything that we do. I mean, when you start looking at us being independent, we're unaffiliated with product suppliers. We are always ensuring that our recommendations are solely based on the best interests of our client. Everything that we do is collaborative, it's multidisciplinary, and everything is tailored. So it's all about going in and understanding the needs of every specific client and working towards building that resiliency, making sure that we understand exactly what a client is looking for, and then never over promising, but always delivering the results. Because it's really important that you understand what someone is looking for and that you build that into the solution, and then you build in sustainable solutions, not only from an ESG standpoint. I know ESG is the big buzzword of everything that everybody does, and ESG is definitely built into all of the solutions that we deliver, but it's always got to be something that is sustainable for a client to continue and to evolve with their organizations. You always have to be able to grow your plans and grow your internal organization to match the pace of growth and development of the greater organization. And if the security team and function can't do that, if they get outpaced by the organization, then security starts to fall apart. And once security starts to fail, then your people, your processes, your assets, your facilities start to suffer and become unsafe. So it's always about building that resiliency into the plans and into the solutions that we develop for our clients.
The huge domino effect there, it looks like. So
Absolutely.
speaking to the inclusivity side of things,
Hmm.
I'm going to be going to GSX, in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Past me will be, I guess, when this airs. And one of the first things that I noticed anyway, when I
Hmm.
first went to one of these big trade shows, specifically as a woman covering these big trade shows, is that there are not very many of us there. Uh,
Oh.
there are, there's a lot of
Hmm.
initiatives that are aimed toward getting women to join up. And it's, it seems like it's been going really well. There's that Women in Security documentary that's going to be premiering at GSX as well.
Yes.
It's
Hmm.
very, very heartening, but we're still
Hmm.
outnumbered by men by a pretty wide margin. So,
Yeah.
as one of the rare security company CEOs who also happens to be a
Hmm.
woman, I'm curious to know your perspective and how that perspective has, if at all, shaped the way your company approaches the question of
Hmm.
protection. Because, especially as the question of protection, as we were just saying, shifts year over year over
Hmm.
year.
It's really interesting, and my journey in security has been an interesting one. Um, going back, because I've been in doing security work now for a long time, as you can tell by the gray hair. Uh, um, been doing it for a little over 40 years now. And I can remember there was a time where in a room of 100 men, I was the only woman in the
Oh,
room.
wow.
And it was difficult to, as a young 23-year-old fresh out of school, um, to find my voice in a room of very boisterous people. And don't get me wrong, I love our male allies, love,
Of
love that
course.
there are a lot of men who stand up and support us. But, 40 some odd years ago, that was intimidating. And it was very hard to sometimes speak up and say what my opinion was or what my beliefs were, or even offer a suggestion, because I was quite often dismissed in my thoughts or in sometimes in actual practice. And that was difficult, but it was a mentor of mine who told me, don't ever let it get you down. You need to just keep powering through. I believe in you. I know what you have to say is important, and you just need to, just keep going to these meetings, keep going to these conferences, keep going to these groups, and eventually they will hear you. And it was true. This was my former manager, the security director that I worked for at the time. And it was a wonderful learning lesson for me. And fast forward to today, we've made a lot of progress, but there's there's still a need, I think, to, especially for the younger generation, such as yourself coming in, to embrace things like women in security. And for people like myself to get involved as mentors in things like women in security, and for, the allies around us to support us, because we are far too underrepresented in the community, but we have made a lot of progress. So I think it's important to note that we have made a lot of progress. As a female business owner, it's really interesting. Sometimes I have my senior director of security consulting is a male, and he's a fantastic business partner of mine. And it's really interesting where sometimes we'll go into a meeting, and if we're meeting with a potential client, the client or the potential client will naturally start to look at my partner while we're having the conversation, and I have to kind of steer the conversation back this way. And I don't fault my senior director, because he's a fantastic speaker, and I have no issue with him ever representing me at all. um, but it's just, that's I think the inherent bias that some people have. Um, so, these things happen, we power through them, and we represent ourselves as being knowledgeable, as having the experience, and we just power through and continue to represent ourselves in the way that we best can. Um, I think, there's still progress to be made, and I look forward to the utopia world where at some point, because there's so much that's going on in this world, where everything and everyone is on equal footing. But I do want to acknowledge that I think women in security, just as a profession, we have come a long way, but we still do have a long way to go. I do want to point out one thing. I think there's a book that I would like to encourage a lot of your female listeners to try and get. It's called Vocal Lanterns. All of the sale of the proceeds of the book will be donated to Girl Security. And the book has been authored by a lot of different contributors. It's both by women in security and their allies. And it does really shine the light on a lot of the challenges that women have faced over the years as being leaders in the security field, and some of the challenges we think that we can, and some of the barriers we still need to break down. But it's full of great advice And I think it's something that people will find is to be an interesting read. But as women in security, we've made a lot of progress. We have a lot of CEOs. We have a lot of people who are in fields that we never thought 40 years ago we'd be in. I mean, who would have thought 40 years ago that a woman would be doing executive protection? Who would have thought 40 years ago that we would have had a female director of Secret Service? Who would have thought 40 years ago that we would have had women leading national security efforts? I mean,
Right.
nobody would have ever had those dreams 40 years ago. Or if they did, if a little girl did, it would have been a dream, right? But those types of things are being achieved today. And I just look forward to the day where, we just continue to break those glass ceilings and punch on through and achieve even bigger and greater dreams.
Right. And it is a little wild to me. You're right. We've made a lot of progress. But it's a little wild to me because we make up over half of all people. I feel like that's
Yeah.
an important perspective to have, if you
Hmm.
exclude women, that's an enormous number of people who, may be adversely impacted if their voice isn't brought to the table. But more than that,
Yeah,
women have a lot of unique strengths and insights that I think that they can provide. And what
they
what would
do.
you say a few of those are?
Well, we look at things differently. We see a lot of risk differently than men do. We look at people differently. When we walk down a street, we look
Got our
at
head
we
on a
look at
swivel.
yeah, exactly. You know, there's been plenty of times when I've walked into a room with different people and I've seen things that other folks haven't. Um, so those, I think just the way we look at events can be different. The way we look at situations can be different. The way we listen a lot of times to not only what is said but how it is said is a unique perspective and insight into our ability. We just have an innate, I think, empathy that kind of lends itself into being um, uh, a great leader and a great intuition in order to help not only look at things differently, but being receptive to information that is imparted to us as well. Um, so I think that's just, one or two ways in which, women as leaders and women as security people bring a diverse perspective into the security field.
So I'm curious now then on GMR's leadership structure. Is it sort of also representative of those different perspectives?
It is, so I serve as the CEO. We have a number of diverse backgrounds within our team. We have, different folks of educational background. We have diverse ethnicities, and we just have a whole diverse people. I believe in diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of experience. I'm a DEI champion through and through. So,
It's good to
um,
hear.
yeah, any way that we can celebrate a person's uniqueness, we do that throughout GMR Security Consulting Group.
Thank you for tuning in to part 1 of SecurityDNA's chat with Mary Gates. This podcast is your go-to source for staying ahead in the security industry. It offers sharp insights, real-time trends, and straight talk for industry professionals. It's built to keep you informed and empowered wherever you are. Stay connected, stay sharp, and maintain security at the forefront. To access our podcast lineup, go to podbean.com and search for SecurityDNA. You can also find our podcasts on our Security Frontline, Integrator Newswire, and Security Week e-newsletters. Of course, we'd love to receive feedback from you, our listeners, about topics that interest you. If you have a suggestion, email us at Steve, that's STEVE, at SecurityInfoWatch.com. This episode of the SecurityDNA podcast was recorded and produced by Samantha Schober, that's me, assistant editor at SecurityInfoWatch, an Endeavor B2B brand. From me, Mary, and everyone at SecurityInfoWatch, thanks for listening, and keep an ear open for our next podcast.